Pentagon says that climate change poses immediate risks to our national security. While we can't say any single weather event is entirely caused by climate change, we've seen stronger storms, deeper droughts, longer wildfire seasons. Today, we're here to announce America's Clean Power Plan, a plan 2 years in the making, and the single most important step America has ever taken in the fight against global climate change.
The president is determined that he will be the man who will be long remembered for cleaning up the American air, that he will be the president to emerge with a climate change plan that will be infallible and no one could possibly turn down. It's a funny thing about determination. When it comes to politics and the involvement of Mother Nature, it is always not as inevitable as one might believe. Our guest is senior fellow at the Competitive Enterprise Institute, specializing in environmental policy. Let's welcome William Yeatman to the Hardline. William, thank you so much for joining us. And let me get right to the big criticism that everybody hits on when they hear about the president's plan. We hear the word overreach. In your opinion, is it that or is it on target?
Oh, indeed. Power grab's a cliche that is perhaps tossed around too often, but it really aptly describes what we've got here. It's a genuine power grab. We've got the Environmental Protection Agency, at the behest of President Obama, effectively taking over the entire nation's electricity grid. So they're usurping not just the power of their sister federal agency, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, but they're also usurping the power held by all 50 states. Indeed, it's been for 80 years. It was a New Deal principle in 1935 with the passage of the Federal Power Act. Congress expressly decided that states were to be in charge of their retail electricity sectors. This rule would fundamentally and radically overhaul how the electricity industry has been regulated for, again, 80 years since the New Deal. And it would take that power from the states, from the federal energy regulators, and put it all under the thumb of the Environmental Protection Agency. So, indeed, overreach, I believe, is an apt term for what we've got going on here.
Then here we go playing this ping-pong ball back and forth again. Obviously, things are changing. Obviously, Mother Nature has a hand. Obviously, man has some hand in what goes on here. You have to, I think, accept that at this point. So then, in your opinion, looking at what the president did, what do we then do to at least cut the difference here, not lose a lot of jobs, and at least try to clean up the air?
Well, I think fundamentally, we must have a policy, regardless how you feel about climate change. I think we can all agree that a policy that costs a great deal, indeed $40 to $70 billion a year, would be the most expensive regulation ever imposed in the electricity sector, that these costs must bear some sort of fruit, that there must be some sort of benefit. Alas, this rule is totally bereft of any such benefit to America or the world at large. By EPA's own concession, this hugely consequential rule, the most expensive one ever, one that is a tremendous power grab, would in no way impact the climate. So, is it incumbent upon me, a critic of this rule, to come up with an alternative that's legal? Were EPA to stay within bounds that they've known for 45 years of their existence, that is, instead of trying to regulate the entire electricity sector at once, to do what they've traditionally done and focus on the individual power plant in question, if they were to do that, say by mandating increased efficiency at individual coal-fired power plants, well, that would be legal. I wouldn't have any problems with that. Alas, what we've got here is far from that. Again, it's this power grab that would fundamentally overhaul our nation's electricity sector.
Let me do this then. With about a minute or so to go, let me go ahead and throw a fissionable rod in all of these discussions here, because we just saw some pictures of nuclear power plants. All right, look, I remember a time, at least when I grew up, that there was the possibility that nuclear was going to become the power source of the future. And yes, there have been accidents. Yes, there have been issues. Why are we not going more to nuclear power when it's been proven that when it works well, when it's done right, it saves money and saves an environment?
I couldn't be more with you. What I am for, and the best way to incent the production of nuclear power would be to tear down the regulatory barriers. I've heard a statistic from a nuclear engineer that in the time it would take to deconstruct a nuclear power plant in France, bring the whole operation over here and reconstruct it brick by brick, this is about 10 years, that's the time it takes to license a nuclear power plant in this country. So the solution isn't to have EPA usurp control of the national electricity sector if your goal is to have more of this clean burning nuclear. The solution is to tear down the government regulatory barriers that in effect inhibit the building of any new nuclear power. So
once again, there we go, right to the bottom line. Still the government barriers, still the problem there. Let's break these barriers is what we have to do, and then we don't have to run over state governments, and then we don't have to put people out of work. Gee, it makes so much common sense. Stunning how we came to that in just a few minutes. William Yeatman, pleasure to have you on the show, my friend. Thank you so much for your expertise, and I'm sure as the campaign goes on and this becomes a campaign issue, we will be talking again. Take care. Coming up next, the little nation that wants to be a real American, a real part of America, and is not a real pain in the bank account at the same time. Next.